So, lockdown, back on in London, whoopee-doo. But the great thing about it is we're here to try to take away the boredom. My name's Alex Grunden. Hello, these are the Hidden London Hangouts, a chance to snoop around London transport secrets without leaving your home, because you can't. I don't do this on my own. I've got three amazing people from the London Transport Museum to help me. And the first one is Chris Nix. Good day to you.
Hi, Alex. I feel like we've gone into hibernation mode already as it's coming forward towards Christmas time and it's all getting a bit colder.
The weird thing about it is this is going to be a bit of a different lockdown, I reckon, because last time the sun was out and now it's cold and it's damp. In fact, so much so that Siddy, our lovely Siddy Holloway, has gone back to her home country of Iceland, basically to hibernate while this is all going on. Siddy Holloway, hello.
Hello, calling from Reykjavik, Iceland. Yes, I am still in Iceland, as you can see by the moody backdrop here. I mean, the thing is, it's a little bit less restricted here in Iceland at the moment. So I thought, why not stay for a little bit whilst things are a bit locked down in the UK?
You've done very well. It's a bit sort of Eurovision Song Contest voting in your place. I love it. But we've got someone missing.
And Laura Hilton-Brown is at Charing Cross.
Here we are, Charing Cross. I'm on holiday, but I'm going to be doing some on-site stuff here for you, so I can still join you on the Hangout.
Scrub that, because lockdown came and it ruined her holiday. Laura's with us. Hello, Laura.
Surprise! lucky you, I'm actually here. I did have to come home early. We were at the beach. It was lovely. We got a nice couple of days, but yeah, back in Bromley, guys. So I'm with you tonight.
Well, that is fantastic. We're delighted. So we are Corate. We didn't think we would be, but we are actually. And we're going somewhere today, which is absolutely fantastic. It is a station that you cannot find on a tube map anymore because it's been swallowed up by another one. It's Trafalgar Square. And it was a station that was on the Bakerloo line only, and it's now part of Charing Cross. Chris Nix, take us back to the day that this station opened in 1906.
So Trafalgar Square Station opened in 1906 as part of the Baker Street and Waterloo Railway, which we know today as the Bakerloo line. It was joined the year after by a neighbouring rival station called Charing Cross the Strand, and it survived being powered by lifts until 1926. When it was converted to a station with escalators. It actually wasn't the first plan for putting a station on that site. That the first plan dated back to 1880 with a cut and cover railway up Whitehall, which was put down by Parliament. But the Trafalgar Square station went on to be amalgamated into what we know today as Charing Cross station when the Jubilee line came and joined it in the 70s. So it's quite a complicated station. And although it's known as Charing Cross today, it probably should be known as Crisscross for all of those passageways that kind of confuse people when they travel around it.
Because I think that's your new nickname, isn't it, really, Chris Cross? That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Only
and
weirdly, when Zoom doesn't work. Yeah,
it'd be fantastic. But, you know, the weird thing about it is it now begins to explain why Charing Cross Station, as we all know it now, is so huge. Because it's actually really three stations. You've got Trafalgar Square on the Bakerloo line, you've got Charing Cross Strand on the Northern line, and then that other bit that was the Jubilee line when Charing Cross was the terminus of the Jubilee line way back when. And of course that's closed now, so it's a bit of a mishmash, and it is an amazing station to go and visit, isn't it, Siddy?
Oh God, yeah. And I mean, it's got everything that we love about an old station. It's got old tiles, it's got lift shafts, it's got very spooky ventilation shafts, but also a very interesting kind of history of how it's been kind of swallowed up by its neighbour. And now that, you know, people go through that every day, not realising what was there before.
And Laura, I mean, the thing about this is that this is a very different looking station now to the one that it started off being, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like Siddy said then, it's got a history, it's had a journey. It's kind of had quite an interesting life. And I actually get thoroughly confused with Strand, Embankment, Charing Cross the Strand, Trafalgar Square. It confuses me. And when we went to do the site visit, I genuinely thought we were just going to the Charing Cross part. So when we went to the Trafalgar Square part, it does, you and Sidney have used this phrase today, and already it's making me excited because you both said it's been swallowed up. And it does feel like that, because we got to go into these little pockets that I didn't know that they were behind those doors. I hadn't been either. So we got to kind of explore these little pockets in the station that has literally been swallowed up, which I love that phrase. It really kind of depicts what it was like.
Fabulous. If you're new to the Hidden London Hangouts, we show you a bit of then and a bit of now. Let's start off with then. Chris, show us some photographs from when this station first opened, because when we think about the Bakerloo line platforms at Charing Cross now, they're quite modern and we're going to see them a bit later on, but they were very, very different when the station opened, weren't they?
Certainly. One of my favourite photos coming up in our collection, when you get to see a really well taken shot of how a station
wow.
used to be. Imagine how hard it was to take the photo that well when that was being shot. But there it is.
And look how sparsely decorated it was as well, like a park bench and a cupboard. It's so tiny, isn't it? And also I noticed as well, Chris, on that picture, there's no, I mean, what we would call suicide pits.
Yeah, so we call those anti-suicide pits, and they came about in the Great Depression in the 20s. So this photograph predates those being fitted across the network, and that's why it isn't there.
We ought to look at the station entrance as well, shouldn't we? Because where they were in street level was quite important to the way that London Underground looked way back when. Look at that. It's got the bullseye.
Oh, it looks really lovely. And it's got that old bullseye that we've talked about before, when it's a full disc, you know, instead of just being, you know, the one that Johnston designed that we talked about in an earlier episode about Johnston. So it's a really nice photo of that. And it just shows also the busyness of the square behind it.
All that pretty wrought ironwork as well.
And what's great is you can see there with that disc and bar roundel, as it was known, bullseye rather, as it was known, you've still got the beginnings of the typography coming on there with the dropped U and D at the end of Underground. And also, if you just look on the right-hand side of the railings, you can just see Baker Street and Waterloo Railway, Trafalgar Square station.
And it's such narrow entrances as well, isn't there, as well? Show us another one, Chris.
So here's one square on, which shows a fabulous poster actually on the photo, and we have a example of that poster in our collection, which you can just see on the left hand side, already talking about how you can make links as you travel across London at a time when, you know, think these were rival railways.
Wouldn't this be this would have been probably right around the time when the station opened, because you can see it says Bakerloo Tube, and you know there's no roundel, there's no bullseye or anything.
Absolutely.
There. It's just saying, you know, it's just telling you what it is. So it's quite a lovely
one.
And
I love the design of the poster as well, that you can see above the entrance that's been blown up to the side of it. It's so pretty, but it's so not what you expect from London Underground these days, is there? There's no style similarities at all.
Well, it's before Frank Pitt gets to work in, you know, bringing in a small army of talented illustrators who got busy with the real creativity that we used to seeing the lineage of today. I also noticed it's a day when there's a real pea super fog going on in the background there. Classic London of the era with coal fires.
And that entrance still exists, doesn't it? It just looks very, very different now, with a very different type of tube station sign right above it. Amazing stuff. And of course, down at the ticket hall, it looked very, very different to what we see now, didn't it? Well, look at that.
I like the way they're stressing it's a short stairway to the trains. I mean, a version of that stairway is still there today and never feels short to me, especially when I'm going up it.
yeah.
Too right.
The lift's quite cool though, isn't it? If you just look over on the left where you can see the ornate panel doors and the beware of pickpocket sign above it, beautiful wrought ironwork above it, which is utterly typical of the stations designed at that period. I know we've talked in previous episodes about things like the acanthus leaf tiling that you can see there on the wall.
I was going to say, Laura, look at the tiles.
I just noticed that. I was having a little lean into my screen there to have a peek.
Lovely. And look at that. And also, Chris, the turnstiles are really, really elementary.
Yeah, they are. And the ticket office is what was known at the time as a persimeter, because you're passing through it. And those turnstiles are a way of, a bit like the modern gates today of stopping people who hadn't paid from having an easy time of rushing through. It does look like they've got two there. Do you see there's one as you go to the ticket office, and then there's one in the distance as well. So presumably if they didn't pay, they could escort you out.
I love it. I love it. So that shows lifts, but as you said earlier, escalators came along to the station, as did in so many examples all over central London in the sort of the 1930s. And back in the 20s, I think it was, about late 20s, wasn't it? When Trafalgar Square got its escalators. There's a picture that you've got of the booking hall there.
Yeah, and this one, it almost, if you concentrate really hard, if you know the station today, that area still exists, and those escalators still exist. And Siddy, I know you wrote the Piccadilly chapter in the Hidden London book, and therefore you are our resident queen of all things to do with lifts to escalators. Do you want to?
Quite right, obviously. Yeah, so they started, well, we've spoken about this before, but the first escalator was installed at Earl's Court in 1911. It was kind of the prototype, and then after that they started rolling them out to very busy stations. So for example, Oxford Circus got an escalator in 1914, and then sort of subsequently they started rolling them out. So at Trafalgar Square, which was a very busy station, got its escalators on the 13th of April 1926, which of course means that they had to completely kind of refigure the entire sort of ticket hall and the platforms below, so they had to move the entrance slightly. And they also managed to make some more kind of subway passageways to allow more entrances sort of jotted around the square itself. So it's a really lovely photo, and probably right in the background there you see the slight the subway that leads up to Cockspur Street, which was one of the new entrances.
And just to say, Siddy, just to double check, you can just see a white edge in the background there. That's the escalator tunnel mouth, is it?
Yeah, it's the opening of the escalator, because all escalators on the London Underground have to be custom fitted to each site. So they have to be built in situ, and they are completely custom fitted to it. So every escalator that you go on the Underground is absolutely unique.
I love that. I love that. And Chris, show us one more of a ticket hall. Go on, just because we can. We might as well explore it.
Be able to see in the background there some telephone kiosks, and we've got a shot that's just slightly further over to the right. And Laura, this might remind you of somewhere else that we know and love, that we've talked about recently. Just
look at that.
The other end. So Aldwych Station still has those kiosks there, and actually there are many features about this site which are reminiscent of Aldwych, because it was built at the same time. They're contemporary stations.
And I love the clock above. I do love a big clock. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for those photographs so far. I mean, already we are beginning to get look at that as well. So that one is presumably not Trafalgar Square. That was Charing Cross station entrance, because it says
right.
Hampstead
Strand.
Charing Cross Strand. So that was the entrance to what we now think of as the Northern Line, but was the Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead Railway, abbreviated understandably to the Hampstead Tube there on the board.
And if you'd imagine you're standing in front of the forecourt of Charing Cross Station, so where that big spire is, the Eleanor Cross spire, it's actually to the right-hand side, where there's like a Boots and there's a Paul bakery. That's basically right there. That's where you
get your Evening Standard, isn't it?
Where you get your Evening Standard, love. That's where
Read all about
that was located. Yeah.
Thank you, Siddy.
I've got one last little treat for Laura here, which is we saw the opening to Trafalgar Square Station with all that wrought ironwork, but it got a bit of an update when the entrances were modified. Now look at this from 1935.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I love those kind of drop lantern kind of style street lights on the right hand side, and the signage on the previous photo as well. It's just the stuff that you can imagine people now trying to to buy and have in their house or their garden or somewhere. It's just so beautiful.
It really does go
those
to show. Sorry, Diana, I was just going to say, it does go to show just how much thought went into all the design of London's street furniture, tube furniture, everything really. It was so intricately thought out.
Yeah. And well, I was just going to point out to those eagle-eyed who've watched the other episodes that the roundel with the flagpole is present, which is also known as Chris's cocktail cherry.
Yeah.
Leave
we're
Chris's
still
cherry
waiting
out
for.
of this.
As soon as lockdown's over, I'm doing that cocktail party for us, and yeah, cherries on a stick will feature.
Fabulous.
So yeah, I really like the fact that with this you can see the lineage of that design. We looked at the earlier photo of that station when it first opened, with the wrought iron work, with the bullseye, with the bar and disc, and that drop U and D, and there you can see it updated after Edward Johnston got to the typeface, and it's updated there and much sharper than that first iteration.
Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Now, the thing about some tube stations during the war was that they were used to store stuff. It could have been the Elgin marbles, it could have been posh paintings, it could have been big posh documents, it could have been money. Who knows what was down there? But Trafalgar Square Station, and just to remember, that is the Bakerloo line bit of Charing Cross, that's the bit we're talking about at the moment, was a station that was working all the way through the war. It was a central place, people had to get about, and they used Trafalgar Square. But it didn't always, because it was so central, Chris, it did sustain a bit of damage, didn't it?
Yeah, the Blitz of London, the nightly bombing by the Luftwaffe, began in September of 1940, carried on through to the May of the following year. And initially it was in the kind of the Docklands areas and some of the poorer areas of London around it at the time. But the Luftwaffe has then started targeting more prestige targets, including Whitehall. And this next photo shows they got pretty close. And this is where a very large, I think, armor-piercing bomb managed to go straight through the road and made it rather further than the road.
So that is Trafalgar Square, is it?
It is, yeah. So
right.
Just in the top left is where Admiralty Arch is. You can just see the base of it. And that thing that looks like a windmill without sails made of corrugated iron, that's on the roundabout that's there today. So it's really kind of bullseyed what will be the little roundabout today. And the ticket hall and the passageways of the station are underneath it. And we'll just take a look at the damage that was caused. As I say, this was quite a significant piece of ordnance that hit it.
Crikey. That's quite a wallop, isn't it?
It is.
And you would imagine actually probably would have been an easy target because it's a wide open space in the middle of London. Even with a blackout, you would probably be able to spot Trafalgar Square. And, you know, being a celebrated landmark, it's probably why it got targeted.
And I think because it didn't have any buildings above that spot, obviously the full force of that enormous bomb has allowed it to do that. Interesting sidebar though, as well as the ruined cast iron rings that you can see, which almost took it, you can see they've put up a real fight. But do you see just above it what's showing in the ground? Do you know what that is?
Anybody?
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 What do we like to tunnel in London?
Clay. We love clay.
So you can see that the great chunks of clay at the top, and then below it, in between that dark London clay and the cast iron lining rings, you can just see the grout that is pumped in behind the tunnel when it's first made.
Oh wow! So that's like a sort of cross section of what London looks like if you chopped it in through the centre.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And I like the fact that there's still a bit of tile work on the walls there with the nice little lines. It's quite nice. Laura and me get a bit excited about tiles.
It goes to show just how strong the tunnels are, that it very nearly took it. And as you say, most of the tiling's still on the wall.
I love it. But of course, the entrances on street level, they did do their best to try and bomb prepare them, didn't they? They did.
After this kind of nightly bombing began, they started doing things to harden up the stations. Siddy, do you want to just talk through what we're seeing here?
Mm-hmm. So they basically bomb-proofed the entrances. So as you were going in, you would go through these blast well, they're called blast walls or anti-blast walls, basically. So they're there to prevent shrapnel from a nearby bomb entering into the station and potentially, you know, injuring someone or even fatally, you know, wound someone. So they put these outside every single tube station to kind of protect the entrance from blast.
Wow.
You can also see that they've, with the sign that says underground, that would have been lit, and they've fitted shrouds so that even the very dim light of that wasn't shining up as a target for enemy planes above.
Incredible. I mean, even the amount of work that was done to the entrances just to make them a bit more safe is remarkable, really. I mean, the wartime, we've said before on these episodes, it must have been absolutely awful to be in central London during these times. It must have been terrible.
It was, the underground had realised, you know, along with the government, that war was coming. So they'd actually started a lot of the works to make the underground a safer place before war began, including ordering a lot of floodgates to protect the system. And I know we've been asked about these by some of our viewers, about whether floodgates still exist. Here's the ones that were fitted to Trafalgar Square. They're quite formidable, aren't they?
That's incredible. They're big, very big.
Yeah.
I love admiring that lady's outfit as well there. It's rather lovely.
After a bit of mink, are you, Laura?
Oh.
The question is, do you think those tights that she's wearing are real nylons, or was it the bisto and the eyeliner up the back of the leg? That's the question.
It could have been.
No, she looks like she would have. She looks like she'd have some nylons. Do you see the poster on the left-hand side too, guys? It says "Tea revives you."
Well, it does.
More British, could it?
It does. It's the cup that cleans and never inebriates.
Oh, very nice.
Very,
Depends
very
what you put in it, I think,
important.
Alex.
Don't drink it that often. Thank you very much, Mr. Nix. That is beautiful. And of course, we are, as I say, we're talking about a chunk of Charing Cross Station today. And so far, we've shown you what it originally looked like. And then we went through the war. But you know, in the 1970s, everything started to change. And it was because the Jubilee line, originally called the Fleet line, was going to be built. And it was going to end at Charing Cross. But there's all these bits of stations. There was Strand, that was the Northern Line station. There was Trafalgar Square. And then there was this new bit for the Jubilee line, plus Charing Cross Station overland, British Rail, on the surface. So what they decided to do was do a mega rework, didn't they, Laura?
They did, and this is what, you know, hidden London is all about. This is what it epitomises, and why we all love what we do and love bringing this kind of to the viewers out there, because there's so many bits of this story, and then we can kind of piece it all together, and then kind of and show it. And this journey and this type of story is something that we love to be able to do on Hidden London, which is why stations like this are just perfect for the tours. Corona's completely ruined the physical tours at the moment. So that's, you know, that's tricky. But what we can do here is just kind of slowly piece that together and layer up that story for you. And that, you know, I kind of miss doing that. I think we all do, don't we? So it's nice to be able to have these hangouts to still kind of be able to tell the story.
We love a high vis. We love a high vis.
I do. I miss my high vis.
Well, I mean, you wear it well, babe. You wear it well. But we did manage to get down to the station before lockdown happened. And before we go there, Chris, let's just have a look at the platforms at Trafalgar Square just before the works to bring the Jubilee line in started, because it is just a time capsule picture, isn't it?
It is. I always think of Aldwych as Laura's station. So Laura, I'm going to throw this one to you. You can probably just see the lights at the top are exactly the same as the ones that Aldwych had for a lot of its life. Beautiful things.
Yeah, that's a lovely picture. And the first time I've actually seen that, so that's really lovely.
There's some great 70s beard and flair action going on, just helpfully dating this as the very early 70s before the station shut for the works on the Jubilee line. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that lady is wearing a skirt which is almost exactly the same pattern as City's sofa.
City is a lucky lady.
That special sofa. That special sofa. I love the fact the park bench is still there as well from 1906.
I love that you actually call them park benches.
I love it. And as you can see across the thing, in case people are still watching thinking, there is no Trafalgar Square. Look, there was Trafalgar Square. The station was called Trafalgar Square, and it's now the Bakerloo line platform of Charing Cross. We do have to labour this because suddenly you realise that stories just evolve in London. It's half the joy of doing this kind of stuff. So yeah, I love the lights. I love the tiles. You can still see the sort of glistening tiles all around. And of course, that platform now is covered in murals, which we're going to see in a minute.
But do you know what I think is actually quite, oh, sorry, Chris. I was just going to say, it was quite interesting in that when I first came to London, I remember wanting to go and see Trafalgar Square and looking at the tube map and being quite confused because there was no station for it. So I wasn't quite sure where to get off. So, you know, it's interesting that they amalgamated the two together, but, you know, would have been quite convenient for tourists back in the day to just go to Trafalgar Square station.
Well, I don't make any secret of the fact that I spent a lot of my childhood in the London Transport Museum. And while I was at home seeing my mum recently, I found a little paper advert, one of these pamphlets for the London Transport Museum, and it had a picture of the tube trains and everything else. It was like my big sort of the thing that drew me to the museum when I was a kid. And when you look at how to get there, it says the Strand and Aldwych stations are nearby. So it's actually an old thing that I don't know, picked up from the museum in the shop or something like that. And it actually mentioned Strand, Aldwych and Trafalgar Square stations, all of which are so, the station names are so old now, but they were printed on Transport Museum documents. So it's like, wow, this is all within pretty much in living memory. And there probably are people watching this today who remember Trafalgar Square station. Certainly my mum and dad do, which is just crazy. But the bit you're wondering about is what happened when we went. And there are various videos, and we're going to be rolling them out on the internet in the next few weeks. But we wanted to give you a bit of a sneaky peek. So first of all, we got the keys to the escalator shafts from Charing Cross station down to where the Jubilee line is now. And of course, it's all shut off, it's all switched off, but we got the keys to go in and have a look.
Oh, wow. Welcome to this year's Charing Cross.
And of course, the great thing about that little video is my perspective of that was on my Instagram, which is really quite cool because Chris was filming me filming it, which is really cool. You can follow us all on Instagram. I'm Alex Grundon. There's Chris Nix, there's Siddy Holloway, and then there's Hidden London Law. She's on there now, and we send you loads and loads of lovely tidbits of secrets, gossip, that kind of thing about the tube, and they're all on there. But because of what we were doing, we were down there having a little look round, and this is sort of segment 3 of that station, Trafalgar Square, Strand, Charing Cross, Northern Line, and now the Jubilee Line bit. And we had a nose around there as well, didn't we? Because now that station has kind of, especially the Trafalgar Square bit, has been changed into ventilation shafts, mainly, Chris. You've got what used to be passageways in and out of the lifts, which are now used for ventilation.
So, yeah, one of the challenges we had when we first put the Charing Cross tour together, when Siddy, Laura and I were working out, you know, what will make a great, satisfying tour that is safe and not too long, there were these extra passageways that belonged to Trafalgar Square that were just too awkward to include. They didn't fit with the story we're trying to tell, and they're very awkward to get to. So that's why they're not on the physical tour, but we're going to get to show you what they look like today.
So this actually reminds me a little bit of Brompton Road with the cream and the brown and the green. Alex, what did we call that?
We called it at Brompton Road, it was mint and chocolate and salted caramel, but at Trafalgar Square station, which is where we are, it was chocolate and cream and mint. And that was, you know, it always staggers me how these colour schemes change depending on which station you're at. Just really to make it easy to navigate if you can't tell what the station is by name.
Yeah,
you do it by colour.
Absolutely. Because I mean, there's so much cabling and kind of racking and stuff here that you know you could be forgiven for missing some of this, but you know, nestled in between all of this are such lovely colours. I mean, some of the the ones at the bottom are taking a little bit of a battering there, but you can still see that green coming through. Love it.
Well, I think we'll probably see there's even better survivors than this once we go a bit further in. But we're going to just divert ourselves off through the former lift shaft here. One of my favourite old doors on the system, this one. I love the fact that some wag has put number 10 on it as well.
I feel like it should be like one of those old creaky.
We'll add that on in post.
And there is where we leave it. See, the tantalising moment where we could have got into that lift shaft, but we know you're desperate to see what's really in there. So we've got some stills, because our other service, Patreon, is going to give you the real stuff that you're going to see later. But for now, let's see some stills of what you can see when you go through there. You'll notice the tube tile colours. You've got the green, you've got the chocolate, you've got the cream. But there's also some other really cool details, isn't there, Chris?
So yeah, I think Laura was exactly right on this. It's quite a handsome station, isn't it? And as you say, reminiscent of somewhere else.
Absolutely. When we first went in, I know you were kind of teasing me slightly because you knew that this area existed and I hadn't seen it. So the tiles in that first section were making me rather excited. And then we went through to this section where you don't have that kind of abundance of racking and cabling, which kind of just disturbed the view slightly, even though there were some lovely kind of, you know, snippets of the colour. And then we went through to this section, and obviously the tiles were a little bit dirty, but we're used to this in the tunnels that we go into. But, you know, in all due respects, these are in really, really good condition. And I love that you can see the different kind of pattern work here and the different colours so much more clearly than in the first section. And absolutely, it reminded me of Brompton Road and that first kind of part of our site visit, Chris, where again, I'd not been there before, and I turned that corner and saw very similar colours, all in very, very good condition. And it really just is that time capsule moment that takes your breath away a little bit. And I just think we're so very lucky to get to go into these spaces and just have that kind of, you know, goosebump moment. I know it's only tiles, and I know a lot of people out there are kind of getting excited about tiles with us, which I love. But it's about the space and how it makes you feel, and just that initial reaction. And I definitely got that here in this little bit of passageway.
The great thing about it is, Laura, as you and I both know, these places exist in plain sight. They are hiding behind locked doors in tube stations that we walk past all the time, and they're all just hiding there. And do you remember when we were down there looking at all of this, there was that creepy black door? Do you remember the one?
Absolutely. I love going behind a creepy black door.
It was so Halloween, wasn't it? It was so scary.
We were actually filming it quite close to Halloween as well. So I think we all had that kind of little Halloween kind of feeling going on as well. But you're absolutely right. And I think that's why Hidden London loves to capture these moments as well, because you are just next to a corridor that commuters are in, or just behind a door that people are kind of scurrying past from their way, you know, from A to B or wherever it is they're going in this, you know, epic city. And there we are, just kind of behind the doors or in the vent shaft.
Or in the grills, behind the grills,
yeah,
going, let me out,
let me out.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's so beautiful. It's a great little shot, that actually. You see so much of where people would have just been walking in the 1920s. You know, it's just absolutely amazing. And Siddy, next picture, you'll be able to explain this to us, because in series 1, we got to the bottom of what these all mean. And in Trafalgar Square Station, stenciled on the wall is an S, quite close to the lift doors, isn't there?
Yes. So we found out that these were about where each poster was supposed to be placed, right? So we found that there was a G for general, an F for foreign, and an S for station, so station posters. So that's what it stands for. I'm quite gutted, really, because I did think it should have been a city, S for city, but you know, you can't win them all. But what's really interesting is that it's also stenciled on a very different tile than the tiles we've just looked at. Did you notice that? Yeah, because they're white, not coloured. Exactly. Yeah, they're actually glass tiles if you look at them very carefully, which the others weren't. They were ceramic. And there's an interesting story behind that, is because on one of the sides of Trafalgar Square, of the lift shafts, it was that's where they started the tunnelling for the Bakerloo line. So the finishing was actually different from the rest of the line. Chris, do you want to elaborate on this?
Yeah, no, you've absolutely nailed it. It's a really curious station because there aren't, I can't think of another example of that, where on one side of the lift shafts, you've got this older style of white glass tiling, and on the other side of it, you've got the perhaps more familiar ceramic, highly coloured ones. So yeah, I'm worth exploring this just for that point.
I love this. It's so cool. And every time we do these hangouts, we learn something new. I didn't realize that that was the reason why the tiling was so different between the entrance to the lift and the exit of the lift, purely because of almost the pioneering time when that bit of the station was made. How brilliant is that? And one more, and I get so excited about this because this is well before the typeface of London. Look at that. That's lift number 3, isn't it, Chris?
That's right. That's the passageway that leads into, or led into, lift number 3, and you can see that that's been painted very carefully onto the surface of the glass tiles. It's astonishing it still survives there. And at other stations, which I suspect were done ever so slightly later with the glass work, they would have kind of melted the color into the tiles. They would have kind of taken a glass powder and melted it in. But this is one that's been clearly done after the tiles were put in situ.
I love this place so much. And when we said we were going to do Trafalgar Square, I got so excited because Chris took me there a year ago to have a look around this place. And we call it the mandates because usually we go out and visit a tube station, then we go and have a pizza and a bottle of Prosecco. It's a great night out. It's proper geeks paradise, me and Chris. And we might take the girls along sometime, just maybe, but it's a boys' night out normally. And we went down there and I saw that stenciling 3, and there's a 4 as well with this beautiful brush sweep, not a serif but just a sweep. It's so gorgeous. And the S, we didn't know what it meant when we first visited. Because of the Hidden London Hangouts, we found out that that was poster sites, thanks to you. So it's been really, really cool. And actually, it is a station which I could go back again and again and again, and I would just find more and more beautiful things to look at, Siddy.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I remember going there for the first time 5-6 years ago and finding it amazing then. But then every time I've gone, either somehow my brain just cancels out some of the stuff I've seen because I feel like I'm always seeing something new every time I go there. And I'm always like, was that there? I don't even remember that being there. So it's one that you rediscover again and again. And it's a joy showing all of you that.
It's so gorgeous. And I do love the way the sky is changing in Reykjavik.
I know.
I was just thinking the same thing, that Siddy's got this like amazing sunset behind her, just like happening before our eyes.
It's weird, isn't it, what lockdown is doing? Because, I mean, a year ago, we would never have thought of doing this, let alone anything else. And now suddenly we're stretching around the world because this is where we all find ourselves, and we can still talk about the amazing things in London. And actually, let's have a quick look at the pictures of what we get at Trafalgar Square, which is now Charing Cross now, because those beautiful friezes that are all over those platforms are actually quite a modern addition, aren't they, Siddy?
Yeah, so there's 2 different ones. So there's one for the Bakerloo line and one for the Northern line. So the Northern line one is that one, as you can see by the destination.
Higgy B! We love Higgy B.
That's what we see there is kind of a mural, but well, it is a mural, and it was designed by David Gentleman back when Charing Cross was opened in 1979 as a fully fledged station. And what it's depicting is the construction of the Eleanor Cross, which is the cross that's just outside. Well, the one that's there today is a modern interpretation of the original Eleanor Cross, but this mural is depicting the construction of the Eleanor Cross back in 1240, I believe, which was the
20 to 1.
Something. And so it was. It's basically showing the construction of that cross. It's quite lovely. It's a very medieval style of drawings, and so it fits the narrative.
It's fabulous. When I was a kid, when I used to get on the tube with my mum, she would always tell me that we were going on the Higgy B train, and that was a High Barnet train. I've got absolutely no idea why Higgy B came in, but anyway, I was always a Higgy B train. And on the Bakerloo line platforms, it's very, very different, isn't it? Because I believe there's a man having a really lovely time.
He's just lounging, isn't he? He might be watching the Hidden London Hangouts on a Saturday night at 6 p.m, just enjoying himself, as many of our viewers do.
It's funny you should say that, Siddy. We've got some of that to come.
I was going to
Well,
say,
there
it's
you
a little overdressed for some of our viewers.
Well, there you go. But I think that, well, this mural is depicting the treasures you can find in the nearby National Gallery, which is, of course, situated on Trafalgar Square. So these are all incredibly important works of art, fellas, and must be respected as such.
We should do a little competition. Count the treasures in that photograph, shouldn't we? There are many to see. That's the Charing Cross. That's the Trafalgar Square Charing Cross Bakerloo Line platform. It looks absolutely beautiful. And of course, as we said earlier, because we do love to root around in the dirt on the Hidden London Hangouts, there was a wonderful opportunity for us to go and have a look at those ventilation shafts. Now, to give you an idea of what we're talking about, if we look at the platform, you'll see where these start to be visible on them, because the tube needs air. So here's Charing Cross. This was the Bakerloo line. So this was Trafalgar Square, basically, wasn't it? And that's the holes being dug to get more air into the tube, isn't there, Chris?
Yeah, so when the Jubilee line came to town, the opportunity was taken to give that whole station upgrade, including some much needed ventilation into the Bakerloo line. And you can just see on the left there, one of the ventilation shafts in the foreground and another one just before the tunnel mouth. Those are both still there today, but they've just got grills over them. And that allows the hot air from the tube to rise up through them and be extracted out to surface level and make it just that little bit more comfortable than it would otherwise be.
I love it. And unfortunately, because Siddy was in Reykjavik when we went to the station, Laura and I are a little bit like, because normally Siddy and I are the troublemakers. We have to be honest. Laura and Chris look after us and they make sure we're okay. But to be honest, Siddy and I just like causing trouble. And so, unfortunately, Laura had to take the place of Siddy as my troublemaking chum. And when we went and had a look around the ventilation shafts, we had a bit of a giggle.
So it appears the people who work around here aren't fans of 70s cop shows, but we're going to go and have a look at this shaft now, which ventilates the Bakerloo line.
Alex has a new role today as well. He is lighting man.
Have you seen that on the
He
television?
was bicep curling the lights for you there.
Pretty good work. And interestingly, no tiles here, everyone. You noticed that? Nothing.
Non-passenger area, so it really doesn't need them.
And grimy.
We're in dusty.
We're going to go this way, are we?
Yeah, let's leave this place of horrendous lens flare and move forward.
A very, very heavy incline. And then...
I like these bits.
Choo-choo!
No, it's making quite
Choo-choo! It's like a tube train. So the tunnel rooms, you can tell from the age of them, like 1974, these were put in. So the implication would be, I wish the trains would be quieter, wouldn't you?
timing.
The great thing about this is that because of the age of these tunnel rings, we get an idea that this was put in for ventilation. So it's purely for ventilation. It wasn't earlier than that.
That's right. Yeah, it's part of the same construction that brought the Jubilee line here. You can tell that from the date. And also, if you just look on there, if I just tilt it slightly, you can see we've got metric at this point.
Haven't we?
We're no longer in feet and inches. It's sorry.
What does 4-hole T?
Was it the Pollet?
Oh, it's got 4 holes for the.
Oh, literally.
Bolt holes.
Yeah.
4 bolt holes.
And-
Bolt holes.
I didn't feel like they'd need to write that on there, but there you go.
It's good, isn't it?
Oh, it's when you're asking for the segment to be passed to you. Pass me a 4 roll. I know which one it is.
Never asked for a 4 roll.
And the
I'll have a 4 roll.
and the just there, that size is because we've got metric, and it's no longer feet and inches, and it's now 2.25 meters, which means it's teeny tiny.
Good.
Love a tunnel ring.
Yeah.
It's not flashing light, is it?
No, it's very harsh.
And then down here, see, it looks like there's nothing here, but actually this is down a big hole. Look
Big
at the
hole.
I love that. And you know, the great thing about that is just quite typical of any station tour that we do. We don't take an awful lot of this very seriously, but we know how lucky we are to see it on your behalf, and we like to share this sort of stuff with you. So that is a bit of a canter around Trafalgar Square Station. I hope that kind of explains to you how Charing Cross is the enormous complex that it is now, because it is 3 stations in one. And we did have a lot of fun having a look around it, and those beautiful tiles are all still there. And I swear, behind doors are amazing things on the London Underground, and we try to take you there. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Siddy. We've got notes, queries and questions, our regular opportunity to answer your questions about the tube, and we've had some come in. Mark Smith, who is in Glossop in Derbyshire, but used to be in Romford in Essex. I can say that because I used to work on a radio station in Essex. Chris, I wanted to ask you a question, but I didn't get the chance to watch Saturday's Hangout due to work. I will catch up, I promise. But what I wanted to ask you, for all your experience of Aldwych Station, in fact, all three of you can answer this one, I'm sure. I've heard a rumour that there is a train in the station. There is, you're absolutely correct. It's a 1972 tube train from the Northern Line, 1972 Mark 1 for the Anoraks. It's down there, and it has a tendency to open and close its doors without anybody pressing any buttons. Now, this train is dark. There's no lights on in the train normally. If it started opening and closing its doors, I think we might all be a bit freaked out. He says, are you able to answer this question on Saturday's Hangout and tell me whether or not this is true? Christopher Nix, does it open and shut?
Well, I've never seen it myself, but then I suspect that's because I've never seen it just after it's been brought into the station. So if we were back on last week's Halloween episode, I'd be thinking, oh yes, there could be something mysterious about this. What I'm actually going to suggest is there might be a technical reason for it, which I'm quite used to with older vehicles with air-operated doors. What happens is after they've been moving and all of the air cylinders are charged up, when they park up and the power's switched off, the air starts leaking out of those systems very gradually. And then after a bit, as the valves start to relax and things open, if the doors had been, say, put into it, if a button had been pressed to open them, but there wasn't quite enough air in the system, as one cylinder discharges, it can be just enough to make it go whoop and open up in a way that appears to be uncontrolled.
Wow.
Oh, it makes an uncontrolled whoop.
Do you know what? That put the wind up you, Laura, wouldn't it? That opening up behind you.
I did like his little sound effect. Whoop.
Uncontrolled whoop sounds like a 70s prog rock band, doesn't it?
I love that. Brilliant stuff. So that tube train on there, it'd be, if you're ever in Aldwych, do expect it to open up without any announcements. That could be quite scary. Ricky Lamb is another fan of the Hangouts, and he said it's certainly one of the few highlights of these lockdowns. I have to make sure dinner's ready for 6 o'clock every Saturday. I'm really enjoying them. It's great to enjoy half an hour of utter geekiness, being such a big geek myself, and escape all the current madness. So thank you. We'll give you the details as to how to get in touch with us. We love hearing from you, honestly, and it's great to answer your questions as well. It gives us something to do in these bizarre lockdown days. There's also a question from Chris, who gave us this on Instagram, and he says, who is Inspector Sands? We hear it on the tannoy. Could Inspector Sands please come to the operations room? Who is Inspector Sands, Siddy?
Well, Inspector Sands is it's a code for if a fire alarm has gone off in a station. And the reason they say Inspector Sands is because the fire suppressing mechanism in the tube back in the day used to be buckets of sand. So you'd throw sand on the fire. So that's what it is. It's normally just a routine check if a fire alarm has been activated anywhere. So it's nothing too scary when you hear it.
I love it. It's a true sign of a Londoner as well. If ever you hear Inspector Sands, you'll see people do this on the platform. So what's next? And it's fabulous. So everyone's got to listen out for this sort of stuff because they're all little signposts as to what makes London, London. And we love it. And we hope you do too. So thank you very much indeed, team. We've had a lovely little canter around Trafalgar Square and we've answered your questions as well. Chris Nix, as always, thank you so very much. Your cat's disappeared from the background, but you haven't, which is great.
He has. The fireworks have been going off in the background, so he's done a bunch. It's been great to get back down in the tunnels and do what we do best, which is explore dark and grubby spaces for our viewers' delight.
Sounds like my brain. Coming up before Christmas, we're going to be visiting the filthy ventilation shafts at Piccadilly Circus as well. We went and filmed that a little bit while ago. It's just so cool. And Laura, thank you so much for writhing around in the dirt with me at Trafalgar Square.
Absolute pleasure. What I did want to say though, after seeing that little clip of the three of us in the tunnel there, where you and I weren't massively taking it as seriously as perhaps Chris was, because he was desperately trying to talk about the conversion, like the metric conversion on the tunnel rings, and I was asking ridiculous questions about 4 holes. Sorry, there's a lot of fireworks going off then. That kind of surprised me. And so, Chris, I'm sorry, because we were being a little bit silly and you were desperately trying to be serious. So well done for holding it together. And lovely haircut, Mr. Grundon. Suits you.
Well, thank you very much. There's two things. First of all, I did get a bit of a hint that there might be a lockdown coming, so I got my hair cut, and because I'm not getting caught out again. Last series, I looked like a mammoth by the end of it. I'm not doing that again. And secondly, girls, you'll know this. We've got to get that list of words that we can't say because they trigger giggles. Because with me, it's shaft. Every time I hear them talking about lift shafts, I get the giggles and I just can't stop. So I'm really, really sorry. Siddy, you know this experience very, very well because we're total gigglers.
Yeah, I do love a little pun. You know, it's what the Hidden Londons are all about, the pun.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram, Alex Grundon, Chris Nix, Siddy Holloway, and Hidden London Law, and also at LT Museum. Feel free to slip into our DMs if you've got a question, a comment, or something nice to say about the Hidden London Hangouts. We'll give you a mention. Also on YouTube, make sure that you comment and like this film below, and subscribe to the LT Museum on YouTube, and watch us every Saturday night at 6 p.m. Chat along with us as well. And if you can't meet us at 6 p.m, you can watch it anytime after that on YouTube. And also, let us know what you like to get up to when you're watching the Hidden London Hangouts. We had a photograph come in from Paul, who loves to watch us after a great night out on the tiles.
Oh, look at those legs.
God, his legs
Indeed.
are nicer than mine.
I know, right?
Damn. Nice dress too. I love that. I love that colour. Are you looking
then-
fab in the background too, Alex?
Thank you very much. It's very sweet of you. Have yourself a great day and stay safe.
We're going to go and have a look inside this shaft, which leads out towards the Bakerloo line. You're all right there. Did you just do?
I said, it's like I've been with my two kids from school. It's awful.